everyone, this is Gina. Today I'm going to show you how to make this bangle that I'm calling the Bling Bangle. I know that's not very original, but it is pretty blingy. And it is cubic right angle weave, and it's embellished. And I'll show you how to do this today. I have had requests for different stitches, and cubic right angle weave was one of them. Somebody wanted me to make a cubic right angle weave tutorial because they felt as if maybe they could grasp it if I showed them how. So I've had several requests for different stitches. My last tutorial was St. Petersburg stitch, and that was a request also. And instead of doing a channel of basic stitches, I decided to do the basic stitches, teach you the basic stitches as I teach you how to make a new design. So instead of just making a little tutorial of a couple of stitches and make a whole different channel for that, I'm going to teach you different stitches, but I'm also going to incorporate it into a design so that when you're done, you have a finished product that you learned your new stitch doing and have something to show for at the same time. Anyway, this is what we're going to be making today, and I will show you what we need to make this project. So we're going to need 2 colors of 4mm round beads. I'm using these little glass pearls today. And then we'll need an 11/0 seed bead. I'm using a Toho, and it is opaque luster. Toho cream opaque luster. And then I'm using a 4mm Bicone crystal, and these are Thunder Polish glass crystals, and they're pretty shiny. It's the first time I've ever really used these, and they look pretty nice. So that's what these are, and they are rose, I believe, AB. And let's get started. Thread a couple of yards of Fireline onto your needle, and then we will pick up 4 of one color of our pearls onto our needle. We're going to use 2 colors to help distinguish the walls from the ceiling and the floor, and I will explain what I mean by that. But when you're making a cubic right angle weave, the beads tend to look like a big blob unless you have a couple of colors. Once you figure out the stitch and you know where you're going and what you're doing, it's not necessary to have 2 colors. But to learn, it's a lot easier if you use 2 different colors. So thread on 4, leave a 12-inch tail or so, and then we're going to sew back up through all of the beads we just added. So go back through on the side where your tail is. Go back through the first bead you added all the way through to the last bead you added. Pull your thread into a loop, and going the same direction as the loop that you just created, come back through the last bead again. Or the first bead, I guess, depends on which way you look at it. And pull. Now we have a little section of 4 pearls here. And we're just going to sew back through it again because we don't want our base, this is going to be our base, and we don't want it to fall apart. So let's just sew all the way back through all of them. Get past your tail here. And we'll start in the bead opposite our tail. So my tail is here and my working thread is here now. And you can wrap your working thread around your fingers to keep it out, or your tail around your fingers to keep it out of the way, and kind of give you some leverage if you'd like. So this is our base unit that we're going to be working from. This is what I consider the floor. We're going to build walls and a ceiling. And in order to do that, I want my walls to be a different color than my floor and my ceiling. So I'm going to pick up, for my wall unit, I'm going to pick up a contrast color and then my floor color again, and then a contrast color. and I'm going to go through the opposite side where my thread is exiting. From where my thread is exiting, I guess I should say. And now I've created a loop from this little base unit here. Now this is one wall. This is what I'm going to consider a wall. So we're going to turn our unit. We're always going to be working from the floor, building walls. So we're going to turn the corner, and we're going to build another wall to connect to this wall and the floor. So we have to start from the floor. Always go into your base unit, your floor first, and then pick up a wall bead and a ceiling bead. So you'll pick up your contrast color and your main color. Then you will drop these down. I'm going to go ahead and put them down so you guys can see what I'm doing. Now, for our next wall, we are going to have our wall bead, our ceiling bead, and we're going to use this wall bead to finish our wall. So we'll create a corner here. So we're going to go through the wall bead in the previous unit and then through the floor again. And so now, if I stand these up, I have two walls. And I'm coming out of my base unit, so I need to go into my floor unit again, my floor bead again, on my next one. We're going to build 4 walls from the first 4 beads we added. They will be considered the floor, and so we turn the corner, and we're in the floor. We're going to build a wall. And then we're going to build a ceiling. So we're going to pick up a wall bead, a ceiling bead. And then we're going to connect to the wall in the previous unit and go through the floor. So we will connect to the wall and to the floor. And come through, pull all your thread through. And now we have 3 walls. And so we need to make our 4th wall. This is where people usually get confused. Go down through the floor. You have 2 wall beads already. So you're just going to travel up the wall. Then you're going to pick up a ceiling bead and travel through the other wall and the floor. This is going to pull everything together now. And now we have a little blob here. That's what it looks like when you very first start. So we have to get up to the top unit to secure them together. So we're going to travel up the wall. We're coming out of the floor bead here. We're going to travel up the wall, pull, and now we're just going to travel through all 4 of these beads on top to secure our ceiling and close it in. We have 4 walls, now we're closing in our ceiling. And once we do that, our ceiling will become our floor as we add our next unit. So just sew through all 4. And then back through the first one. Now it's going to look a little thready because I'm using bigger beads, but if I use little tiny beads, it's more confusing. But now you can see basically what we've done. We've got a floor, walls, and a ceiling. Now we're going to build from the ceiling, so it's going to become our floor units. And how we're going to do that is we're going to add a wall and a ceiling and a wall bead to our unit. We're going to go back through the bead we're exiting on the opposite side and pull. And now we have our first wall. So we're going to travel through our floor on the next side here. And we are going to use this wall to connect to, so we need to pick up a wall and a ceiling for this side. So we're going to pick up a wall and a ceiling bead. Then we're going to connect to the wall on this side. We're going to come through it and the floor bead and pull. And now we have 2 walls. In order to make our next wall, we have to travel down into the floor, the next floor bead, pick up a wall bead and a ceiling bead, because we're going to share this wall bead as our next wall in our unit. So then we will come through that wall bead, and then back through our floor, and you can do those in one stroke if you'd like. And now we have 3 walls. So we need to build our 4th wall. We already have 2 connecting walls and a floor. So all we really need to do is add a ceiling bead. So we're going to go through the floor first. Always go through the floor first. Then travel up one of the walls. Of course, the wall where your bead is, or where your needle is, your thread is. And then pick up a ceiling bead, connect it over to the next wall, and come down. Go through your floor bead again. It has to be connected and secured. So we'll sew through our floor bead, and pull. And now we have 2 boxes. However, our ceiling beads are still kind of loose, so we're going to go up to the top, travel through the wall, and then we'll just sew through all of the ceiling beads. I'm going to go one more, just to make sure the whole thing is together. I go around the whole thing and then through one more bead, just to make sure it's nice and secure. And this is what you have so far. And now your ceiling beads become your floor beads. And you start by building a wall. You need 2 walls and a ceiling. So we'll pick up a wall bead, a ceiling bead, and a wall bead. And now we will have 1 complete wall. Go through the opposite side that your thread is exiting into your bead. And now we have 1 wall. Go through the floor bead on the next side of the unit. Pick up a wall and a ceiling bead, like this. So we have this wall here to connect to. We're coming out of the floor. We need to build a wall here and a ceiling bead. So we're going to go through the wall here to connect. And then we're going to go through the floor bead to secure, anchor it, and now we have 2 walls. And we go through the floor bead in the next side of our box. And we have a wall bead here, so we need a wall bead here and a ceiling bead. So we'll pick up a wall bead and a ceiling bead and come down through the existing wall. Now we need to anchor our wall to the floor, so we'll go through the floor bead that we begin our unit in. And now we have 3 walls, and we will go through the floor bead, up one of the walls. All we need is a ceiling for this wall, so we're going to pick up a ceiling bead, come back through to connect it to the opposite wall, anchor to the floor, climb back up the wall, and close in your ceiling. So we'll go through this bead, and we'll just go through all of the beads on top. Close them together, secure them, and then they will become the floor beads for our next unit. All the way around, and then through one more. And this is what we have so far. It's a little unit of boxes. Of course, I'm using round beads, so it's not square, but you can see how it comes together and it becomes a cubic right angle weave. We're going to make one more unit just to make sure everybody has a grasp of the stitch here. And we're going to then go ahead and go to length. We're in our floor beads now. Our ceiling has become our floor. We need to start with our first wall to build from. So we're going to pick up a wall bead, a ceiling bead, and a wall bead. We're going to anchor this to the floor. So we're going to come through the bead we're exiting on the opposite side and pull. What is going on there? Okay, we're going to get rid of that bead because it doesn't seem to have a good hole. So we're going to try this again. So we need to anchor to the floor. We've picked up our wall bead, our ceiling bead, and our wall bead. And now we have our first wall. We need to anchor to the floor, always into the floor bead next to your unit that you just created. Then we're coming out of the floor. We're going to build a wall, a ceiling, and connect to this wall. So we need a wall bead, a ceiling bead, and then we're going to go through the existing wall and the floor bead to anchor it and pull. And now you have 2 walls. Now we're going to go through the floor bead. Always have to go through the floor bead before we start our next wall. And we have a wall here and a floor, so we need a wall here and a ceiling. So we pick up a wall bead and a ceiling bead, and we come through the existing wall and the floor and pull. And now we have 3 walls, and we have all the beads we need except for our ceiling to create our 4th wall. So we're going to climb into the floor, always the floor first, and then climb up the wall, and then add your ceiling bead, come down the opposite wall, secure it to the floor, and then up the wall to the ceiling. Close the ceiling by sewing through all the beads on top. Okay, so the way we're going to determine length, it can be done a couple of ways. You can take a soft tape measure that you use with your sewing kit and wrap it around the biggest part of your hand, including the knuckle of your thumb with your thumb tucked under, and add right at an inch to that length, and that's how long your bracelet will need to be. Or you can wrap a piece of ribbon around your hand at the biggest part where your knuckle is. Find where it meets and then add an inch and cut it there. And the reason we're adding an inch is because this particular weave is kind of large. It's pretty good size. It'll take up some room on the wrist. By the time I join this together and embellish it, it's going to get a little tighter and lose a tiny bit of length anyway. So that is how you're going to measure. And once you've established your length that you want for your bracelet, I've made mine just right at that length, then we are going to join the two ends together and into a bangle. So let me get you real close and I'll show you how we're going to do this. I have threaded my tail, I have threaded my needle onto my tail anyway, and I am going to use my tail to join the two ends, and then I can use my working thread to come back through it again to establish a very strong connection. Now you can see the two ends. I have the ceiling beads and the floor beads already. I need to add the wall beads. So we've already established the top and the bottom of our weave here. So all we have to do to join these two ends together is add the walls. So we are coming out of this little bead right here. I'm turning the inside up and I'm going to start on the inside so it's easier as I work my way around. Let's get really close and see if I can get centered here. Okay, so there's my ceiling, or let's call it floor. This is my floor. I'm going to pick up a wall, and then I'm going to go into the ceiling bead in the other side, the bead directly opposite. Make sure nothing's twisted when you do this. Okay, now we have our floor, a wall, and a ceiling. Now we need another wall. So we're going to pick up another one of our wall beads and we're going to go into the floor. And pull. And we're going to come up the previous wall bead and back into the floor. Then we're going to turn our unit. You can see I have the connection there and I need to connect here. So I am now coming out of the floor bead on the unit we already did. So I'm going to come into the floor bead on this side, just like we would do normally. And then I'm going to pick up a wall bead because I have a wall here, a floor, and a ceiling. I'm going to add another wall bead by going into the bead opposite the one I'm coming out of. Then I'm going to go down to the wall bead that was already there, go through it, go through the floor bead again, and pull everything tight. Then I'm going to turn again. I've got my working thread in here, let me get it out. This is the bead my working thread is coming out of, so I'm just going to kind of ignore it. And now I need to come through the floor bead in the next unit that we're going to join. And so now I have a wall a floor, and a ceiling. I'm going to pick up another wall, and I am going to come directly through the ceiling bead across from the bead that we're coming out of and pull. And now I'm going to go into the wall bead that was already there and pull my thread through, then back through the floor bead. Then I'm going to turn to my next unit. Now, all four of my beads, whoops, there we go. Now, all four of my beads are here on my next unit. You can see I have a wall, a ceiling, a ceiling, a floor, and two walls. And so now all I have to do is sew around them and secure them as we would when we were doing our regular units before the top beads. I'm just going to sew through all four of these beads in this unit on the bottom here and pull it together. Okay, and right after I come out of this, I am going to pull everything tight. I'm going to grab myself a half hitch knot right here and pull. And then I'm going to sew down into the unit right next to where my thread is. And I'm going to grab another knot on my thread bridge. Then I'm going to sew down into my next unit again. And I'm going to continue doing this until I run out of tail thread. I'll cut off whatever I have left, and then we will come back and start our embellishments with our working thread. Okay, so now that we have sewn in our tail and tied it off, we're going to find our working thread. Now this is going to be the inside of my bracelet, and this is going to be the top of my bracelet. And so I'm going to come out of one of my wall beads, coming forward here. Let me show you. You can just sew through until you're coming out of a top bead and one of the wall beads, and your thread is ready to use between the two wall beads here. So pick up 2 11-0 seed beads and sew into the next purl. And we're just going to do this all the way around to kind of cinch it, work together, just like that, and establish a top and give it some fanciness, and hopefully it'll cinch it in a little bit and make it a little bit smaller. So we'll just slide through all of our side beads here and add 2 little 11-0s. And we'll just continue doing that until we get all the way around. Then we'll cross over and do the other side. So once you have finished going around and putting all of your little 11-0 seed beads all the way around, then you will be coming out of one of your beads on top here. I'll just sew down into a middle bead like this. Sew into a side bead like this. And then on the inside, we're just going to pick up 1 11-0 seed bead, and we're going to go between the beads just like we were doing on the outside, but we're just going to use one, and we will travel between these purple beads on the inside here, placing 1 little seed bead and pulling. And we'll do that all the way around the bracelet. When we have finished this, we'll come back and move to the next step. Okay, so we have finished our little beads on the inside. Now you will just sew through a middle bead here. Sew through a middle bead, and sew through the top bead, and have yourself coming out of what was originally your wall beads. And then start again. I'll show you where I'm coming out. Right here. I've just finished my little beads on the inside, on the other side of the bracelet. Turn the bracelet over, slid up through a middle bead, and then, well, actually slid up through this bead, and then through this bead. And now I'm going to begin putting one more seed bead in between each bead on the inside. So we'll just go all the way around the entire length of the bracelet, putting one seed bead on the inside on the other side of the bracelet now. Just continue doing that, and then we will work our way to the outside and put two on the outside. Now I have finished my inside one little 11-0 seed bead all the way around on the opposite side. So I've got two on this side, one on the inside there, one on the inside on the opposite side of the bracelet. And now I am going to, I'm coming out of this little bead here. I'm going to go into one of the sideways beads. Pull, make sure you cinch it in so that there's no thread in between the bigger beads. Go through one of the wall beads here on the outside, and then we will begin, just like we did on the other side, putting two 11-0 seed beads between each of the 4mm pearls on the outside row of the bracelet. So just go all the way around the entire length, placing two 11-0 seed beads between the beads, and then we will do the next step. Okay, so I have finished doing all of my little 11-0s between all of the beads on the outside and all of the beads on the inside. So there's one on the inside on both sides between all the beads on the border, and also on the outside there's two beads between each one. And now that I have finished my last row of inserting my little 11-0 seed beads, I'm coming out right here. Let me show you. Coming out of the bead here, I'm going to go into the little sideways bead here and pull through. And now I'm going to start my top embellishments. So I'm going to pick up an 11-0 seed bead, a 4mm crystal. My son is making a whole bunch of noise upstairs. Okay, so we're going to just place these in here. So we're coming out of this side here. We're going to go into the next pearl on the opposite side that we are exiting here. So we're exiting here, we're going to come across in a diagonal and go through and pull. And that is what that'll look like. And then we are going to pick up, we're exiting right here now, we're going to pick up an 11-0 seed bead, a 4mm Bicone crystal, and an 11-0 seed bead. And we're exiting this side, we're going to go into the opposite side of the bead next to it. So we'll just pull that into line, just like that. Then we will pick up an 11-0 seed bead, a 4mm Bicone crystal, and an 11-0 seed bead, And we'll do the same thing. We'll travel from this bead to this bead. And pull tight. And one more time. Pick up an 11-0 seed bead, a bicone crystal, an 11-0 seed bead. You're coming out of this pearl on the top. We're going to go into the next pearl in line on the opposite side and pull. Now these get a little bit thread tight, so they're going to take a little bit of strength there. So that's what that'll look like. And we'll go all the way around the entire length of the bracelet, putting our top embellishment on, just like that. And okay, so I have finished my entire top embellishment, and now I'm going to embellish the sides. So let's get close. I am coming out of the bead in the very top here where I finished my embellishment. So I'm going to sew into the next bead in the thread path that's closest to it, down on the side here. Now, actually, I'm going to sew down into the bead, the sideways bead here. And my embellishment on the top is going this diagonal, so I want to go the opposite way with my embellishment on the side here. So these are going down like this. I'm going to bring these up like this. So I'm going to pick up an 11-0 seed bead, a 4mm crystal, and an 11-0 seed bead. And then just like we were doing on the top, we're coming out the bottom of this bead here. We will then go into the top of the bead next in path, and we'll go at a diagonal and just go through it. The first one's a little tough. Once you get through, it won't be quite as tough. And pull it like that. And then we'll pick up an 11-0 seed bead, 4mm bicone, 11-0 seed bead, and we will come down into the next pearl in line and go through it. Mine is a little thread tight. I'm using 10-pound Fireline, so it's probably best to use 8 or 6, but I just decided to use 10 for some crazy reason. Then into the next one. And we'll just keep moving around the entire bangle this way, and then we'll sew through the bottom beads and get ourselves to the side on the opposite side of the bangle and do the same thing. So you'll just want to make sure that your little beads on the other side are also facing the opposite direction in your slant, in your diagonal. On this side, you'll have them go this way. So go ahead and finish out this entire embellishment, sew through the bottom, and do the other side, and we'll be back. Okay, so I have finished my last embellishment and sewed through a few of the pearls and in the bottom and tied off and cut my thread off, and this is what it looks like. Pretty blingy. So this is what it looks like on. If you have a smaller hand, it's going to look better on you. I have a really big hand and a small wrist, so bangles don't really work well for me. I don't usually make them for myself, just because of the fact that they have to be really, really big to get over my hand, and then they're really big on my wrist. But if you have a small hand, then it'll look a lot better. Although that doesn't look bad, it's just kind of big. Anyway, that's what it looks like. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and have a good day. Bye-bye.